All right, everyone, say good morning. Let's begin. So we left off yesterday. On Gimel Amud Aleph. Gimel Amud Aleph, 4 lines down. Suppose if you remember again, the Gemara left off yesterday with the statement that Lamaisa, a person who hears but does not see, person who hears but does not speak, Shomea Umedaber, or again, someone who speaks but does not hear, is chayiv in simcha, chayiv in this of simcha v'yamtiv, but what? But pater from re'iyah. So the Gemara asks, ma'ishna le'inyan re'iyah deptiri, u'ma'ishna le'inyan simcha demechayvi. Why is it that ultimately, again, why is it that by re'iyah the person is pater, this person who's lacking either hearing or speaking, and by simcha is chayiv? To which the Gemara answers, le'inyan re'iyah, gomer re'iyah re'iyah mehakel. Because when it comes to re'iyah, we have a gzer shava of re'iyah from hakel. But remember, what is hakel? Hakel is the sukkis after Shemitah. There is, again, it's going to be next sukkis for us. There's always a massive gathering in the courtyard of the Beis HaMikdash. The king reads the Torah, and everyone comes together ultimately again to learn. This is on the second night of Sukkot, on the Sukkot after Shemitah year. So we learn it out from re'iyah from hakel. What does it say about hakel? Dichsiv hakel asham ha'anoshim v'hanoshim v'ataf. The Torah says, gather the people, men, women, and children. Uksiv, and the pasuk says, Bevo kol Yisrael, when all of Yisrael comes together, leiraos es penei Hashem. V'hasam, so the Gemara says, therefore, the same way it says re'iyah by hakel, it says re'iyah by yomtiv. So we'll say, so what does that have to do with anything? V'hasam minalan. So how do we know that by re'iyah of hakel, if you're missing either what? Either hearing or the ability to speak, that you are pater from hakel? Dichsiv, because the pasuk says, leman yishma'u u'leman yilmedu, because the pasuk says, in order that you will go ahead and hear and that you will learn. V'tanya leman yishmu. What does leman yishmu teach us? Prat lemedaber ve'eno shomeh. So we'll say, since by hakel it says that you have to hear what the king is saying, that comes to include what? Someone who speaks but does not hear. So someone who is deaf is exempt from hakel. Uleman yilmedu, and in order that you will learn, prat l'shomeh ve'eno medaber. This comes to exclude someone who hears but does not speak. Are you trying to say, therefore, if someone can't speak, they don't have the ability to learn? Well, so listen to this. There were these two men who were mute, and who were in the neighborhood of Rebbe, and they were the son of the daughter Rabbi Yochanan ben Gudgada. Others say no, they were the sons of the sister of Rabbi Yochanan. What happened? Every time Rebbe would go into the base medrash to give a shiur, these two mutes would go ahead and come and sit right in the front of the shiur, right in front of Rebbe. And what happened? What would they do? They would go ahead and shake their heads. They would shake their heads. And they would move their lips. They'd move their lips. So we'll say, so again, obviously, it wasn't immediately clear exactly what they knew or what they didn't know. No, what happened? Rebbe davened for them. V'itzu, and they were healed. And we'll say, listen to this. V'ishtachach, dahavu gamiri hilchasa, v'sifra, v'sifri, v'kula shas. And I will say, it turned out that these two individuals, of course, were learning the entire time. They soaked up all of this information, and they were proficient in all of these different areas of Torah. So I will say, the point that Gemara is making over here is, speech doesn't have the ability, doesn't mean, speech does not indicate whether or not the person has the ability to learn. Even if a person, again, ultimately can't speak at all, they still have the ability to learn. Amar Zutra, Kari Bey Leman Yila Meidu. I say, even though the pasuk is read as Leman Yilmadu, it should be vocalized as how? Leman Yilamedu. Yilamedu means what Rabbi say? To teach. To teach. You go to Hakel in order to teach. So I'll say, so what does that mean? Look at Rashi for just a moment. Leman Yilamedu. Ve'ein zeroi lilmod lamed achirim. Rabbi say, so the way the Gemara is understanding it now is the following. When the pasuk says you come to Hakel, what's the point of Hakel? Leman Yishmu, so that you could learn, you could hear. Ulaman Yilamedu. And you can teach it to others. So we'll say, what good is amassing spirituality? What good is amassing Torah if you can't convey it to others. Again, it doesn't mean a person has to give a shiur. It doesn't mean a person has to teach a large number of people. But it means that a person has to find a way to be a conveyor, a teacher of Torah to his family, to his friends, to people within his circles. That's the whole point of learning, to be able to convey it to others. Therefore, again, because the person without speech is unable to convey it, therefore he's exempt from hakel. Rav Ashi says, "Vaday l'man yilamedu." Rav Ashi says you have to read it as l'man yilamedu. Why? Because if you think that it's just l'man yilmadu that you should learn, the chayvan delo mishtay lo gamar. Is that true that if he can't speak, he's not able to learn? The chayvan delo shama lo gamar. But I will say again that I can make the argument: if a person can't hear, he's not able to learn. At least in the times of the Gemara. Ha milaman yishmu nafka, and I'd be able to learn that out from the phrase of laman yishmu. So therefore, why would I need laman yilmadu? Ella vaday laman yilamedu. Therefore, Abba is coming to teach us what laman yilamedu, and that halacha lamaisa, the person who can't speak is therefore exempt from hakel. So Abba say what comes out according to that limud is the following. So essentially, now there is a gzeir shava from re'iyah of the regalim to re'iyah of regel. And just like by, to re'iyah of hakel, and just like by re'iyah of hakel, someone who hears but does not speak is pater from hakel. Someone who speaks but does not hear is pater from hakel because of laman yishmu ulaman yilamedu. The gzeir shava to re'iyah of Yom Tov says that these individuals, a person who can't hear or a person who can't speak, are also pater from aliyah l'regel, from re'iyah on Yom Tov. Rabbi Tanchum. Rabbi Tanchum said, "Chirish ba'azno achas." So let's say a person is deaf in one ear, not in both ears, but just in one ear. So pater min hariyah, such an individual is pater from being ola regel. Shne'emar, for literally from seeing the base of the shne'emar ba'aznehem, because interestingly enough, this phrase, that word is not by re'iyah, is not by going up to Beis Hamikdash on the pilgrimage festivals. That word is by hakel. So by hakel it says that you have to speak into their ears. Literally the pasuk is Asher tikras haTorah hazos neged kol Yisrael ba'oznehem. So again, remember, we still have the gzeira shava of re'iyah. Right, re'iyah from hakel to aliyah l'regel, and therefore again, just like by hakel it says ba'oznehem, you have to hear in both ears. So too again by re'iyah, you have to also be able to hear with both ears. V'hai ba'oznehem mi ba'ilei ba'oznehem d'kuli Yisrael. But that's not true. What that ba'oznehem teaches us is that the words of the king when he reads the Torah in Hakel have to be heard by all of the people, meaning that Hakel must be an assembly of the entire nation. Hahu mineged kol Yisrael nafka. We learn that out from the phrase of that the king has to stand opposite the entire Jewish people. Everyone has to be assembled. So one second, mineged kol Yisrael. Well, that can't be true, because if I just learn out that the entire people have to assemble from the phrase of mineged kol Yisrael, hav amina afagav lo shami, I would have thought that it's okay as long as everyone shows up. Even if they don't all hear, it's okay. Therefore, kasav rachmana ba'aznehem v'hu dishami. Therefore, the pasuk says that they have to hear it in their ears to teach us that it's not just enough to be present at hakel, but rather what? A person must actually hear as well. To which the Gemara answers, hahu me lama'an yishmu'u nafka. Therefore, we learn out this halacha from the phrase of lama'an yishmu'u. Rabbi Tanchum. Chiger biraglo achas. Rabbi say if a person is crippled in one leg, let's say a person is lame in one leg. So what is the halacha? Patra min hariyah. He is exempt from aliyah l'regel. He's exempt ultimately again from going to the base of the shne'emar. So I'll say because it's actually interesting, Joshua, because the pasuk says regalim, which we could also vocalize as how? As raglayim. So because again the vocalization is raglayim, it means that a person has to have two able feet in order to be chayiv in re'iyah. Says 1 second. Vaha regalim or raglayim mi boile prat leba'ale kabin. But actually, we use that drasha later on to teach us that this comes to exclude someone about say bali kabin. If you look at Rashi here for just a moment, Rashi says prat leba'ale kabin kishachatchu raglayim. About say if a person had chas his leg amputated, nasnu kav katan besof shoko v'nosin bo muchin v'somich shoko alav. So about say essentially this was a Talmudic prosthetic, right? So the idea is the person had their leg amputated, they would put the stump essentially into like a wooden leg that had a hollowed out receptacle. They would put rags to just make the wood a little bit softer, and that's how a person would walk around. So a person could actually have 2 feet like that, wooden legs. So the idea, the Gemara says later on, that a person with wooden legs is exempt from aliyah l'regel. To which the Gemara says, no. Hahu mipamim nafka. We actually learn out that exemption from the word pamim. The Gemara says this sanya, pamim. When the pasuk says pamim also meaning shalosh pamim, pashana. Right? Literally the pasuk by the aliyah of the regal 3 times a year. So what does it mean pamim? This sanya pamim ain't pamim ella raglayim. So we'll say pamim. Pamim ultimately means what? Pamim means feet that or legs that in order for a person to be chayv and aliyah the regel, ultimately again they have to go ahead and actually have feet. V'chinu omer, and it quotes over here the pasuk tir semena regel. We will say the pasuk Gemara is quoting from the pasuk from Yeshaya. Tir semena regel, literally the leg or the foot will trample. Ragle ani, the tir semena regel ragle ani, the foot will trample the foot of the poor. Pa'ame dalim. The souls of the soul, S-O-L-E, the soul ultimately again of the impoverished. So we'll say you see this idea that in this context that shoresh of pam, right, pamim ultimately means what? The actual soul of the feet, or the actual feet themselves. Va'omer, furthermore the pasuk says, so we'll say what the Gemara is suggesting over here, just to follow this train of thought, the Gemara is trying to show that a chiger, that a person who's lame in one leg, is pater from re'iyah, is pater from aliyah l'regel. So the Gemara wanted to darshan that's because the pasuk says regalim, which we could vocalize as raglayim. To which the Gemara says, no, you can't use out raglayim because raglayim is used for something else, ba'alei kabin. To which the Gemara says, no, ba'alei kabin is learned out from the phrase pamim. Because pamim, as much as pamim means times for our purposes, the Gemara has just proven that the word pamim also means feet. Also means legs. And therefore, Lemaisa what? Lemaisa, we learn out from there that in order to be chayiv and aliyah the regel, you have to have your own legs. If you don't have your own legs, you have a prosthetic, you have something artificial, then Lemaisa, you are exempt from aliyah the regel. I will say now, once the Gemara brought this up, the Gemara takes it a little bit further. Furthermore, the pasuk says, Ma yafu pa'amayich. Again, Gemara is going from the pasuk in Tehillim. How beautiful are your footsteps, Bana alayim, in your shoes, Bas Nediv, daughter of the noble ones. What is that talking about? Darash Rava Mai Dichsiv, Ma Yafu Pa'amayich Bana alayim, Bas Nediv. What does it mean when it says, how beautiful are your footsteps in your sandals, in your shoes, the daughter of the nobleman? Kama No'in Raglein Yisrael has such a beautiful idea. How beautiful are the feet of the Jewish people? Bishar Sha'olin L'regel. How else, it's amazing is, the foot is often a part of the body that gets so dirty and gets so fashmutz. But yet, again, the feet of Klal Yisrael, when we are Ola Regel, even when they're covered in dust and everything like that, how beautiful they are ultimately, again, because they're being used to ascend to Yerushalayim. It's a beautiful idea. Bas Nediv, what does it mean, the daughter of the nobleman? Bito Sha'avram Avinu Shenikra Nediv. Klal Yisrael is the daughter of Avram Avinu, who is called the nobleman, Shena Amar, Nedive Amim Ne'asafu, the nobleman of the nations gathered, Am Elokei Avraham, the nation of the God of Avraham. Elokei Avraham v'lo Elokei Yitzchok. But he's only the God of Avraham, not the God of Yitzchok v'Yaakov. Ela Elokei Avraham. Why does it associate God with the God of Avraham? Why does it call God the God of Avraham? Shahaya Tchila Legerim. Because we'll say Avraham Avinu, Kadosh Baruch Hu identifies particularly with Avraham Avinu. Why? Because he was the first convert, so to speak. He didn't convert, of course, to Judaism. There's no Judaism, but he was the first real convert in a long time to monotheism. Rav Kahana Darash. Rav Kahana said, Darash Rav Nosson Rabbi Yomi Yishum Rabbi Tanchum. So we'll say, as often happens in the Gemara, so once we go ahead and we quote a particular person in something related to our topic, so it's not difficult for us to go off topic a little bit. So the Gemara Rav Kahana said that Rav Nosson Rabbi Yomi Darash name Rabbi Tanchum, Mai Dichsiv Abarek Ein Bo Mayim. What does it mean when it says that the pit was empty, there was no water? This is by Yosef, right? That Yosef was thrown into the empty pit. So what does it mean that the pit was empty, there was no water? After you told me that the pit was empty, that remember again, this is when the brothers wanted to first kill Yosef, then sell Yosef. So what is if you tell me the pit is empty, I know there's no water in there. To which the Gemara says, Ella mayim ein bo. Rather, the pasuk is coming to emphasize there's no water in the pit. However, avan choshim va'akravim yesh bo. There was no water, but what is there? There were snakes and scorpions. Tan Rabbanan. Rabbi says is beautiful also. Tana Rabbanan. Ma'aseh Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka of Rabbi Elazar ben Chasma shaholchu lahakbel pnei Rabbi Yoshua bePekim. So we'll say one time it happened that Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka and Rabbi Elazar ben Chamsa went to visit their Rabbi Yoshua in Pekin. In Pekin, Rabbi say, look at Rashi. What is in the hakbel panav? Yom Tov haya shechayev adam lechabed es rabbo bak balas panik kidarim mesachas Rosh Hashanah. Madu atalechas hayom lo chodesh lo Shabbos. Rabbi say there is a halacha that one is supposed to visit their Rebbe on Yom Tov. One is supposed to visit their Rebbe on Yom Tov. So therefore, again, Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka, Rabbi Elazar are going to visit their Rebbe, Rabbi Yoshua in Pekin on Yom Tov. Amr lahem. So Rabbi Yoshua asks his talmidim, "Ma chidush chaya bebeis hamedrash hayom?" Tell me what Tell me something good. What chidush? What novelty? What new idea did they advance in the beis medrash today? Amr lo. So look what they said to Rabbi Yoshua. Rabbi, talmideich anu. Rabbi, we are your students. Umeimecha anu shosin, and we drink your water. In other words, Rabbi, we didn't come here to tell you what we learned. We came here, why? To learn from you. So Amr lahem, Rabbi Yoshua says, Afa pikein. Yev shel beis hamedrash below chidish, right? So Rabbi Yoshua says that's fine. I'm going to teach you also, but tell me, there's no such thing as a beis medrash without a chidish. Meaning, there's no such thing as a group of Torah scholars getting together without advancing some novel idea. Tell me what came out, what was said. So he says. Furthermore, he says Shabbos Shalmi Haisa. Whose week was it? Now, also what he's referring to over here is, remember the Gemara Maseches Brachos, where Rabbi Gamliel is deposed from being the Nasi, and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah replaced him. But then over time, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah and Rabbi Gamliel actually shared the mantle of the Nesius. So Rabbi Gamliel lectured 3 weeks, 3 Shabbosos. Shabbos means a week, 3 weeks out of the month, and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah did 1. So Rabbi Yoshua asked, tell me, whose week was it? Who's he considered in the beis medrash? So the answer to him, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah haisa. It was Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah's week. Ubema haisa hagada hayom. And Rabbi Yoshua says, so no, tell me, what did they learn today in the beis medrash? Amrlo b'parashas Hakel. Rabbi, they were learning the parasha of Hakel. The parasha of Hakel. So Omad Darash Basa, tell me, what did they say about this? It's like pulling teeth. So tell me, what did they say about Hakel? So the Talmidim finally said, the pasuk says, Hakel asa'am ha'anoshim ataf. So the pasuk says, by Hakel, gather the nation, the men, the women, and the children. Im anoshim ba'im lilmot. So I understand the men come to learn. Noshim ba'os lishma. The women come to listen. Taf lama ba'in. Why do the children come? Right? Meaning, I understand men and women are adults. They each have meaningful experiences when they hear the king teach Torah. Why is the children? Why are the children coming? Also, listen to how beautiful this is. Kedei litain schar lemivi'ehen. To give reward to those who bring them. Or in other words, right? So the parent gets reward for bringing the child. I'll tell you something so beautiful that I once saw in the Maharal. He brings this down. What does it mean? It means that ultimately, again, what reward do you get for bringing your child to Hakel? So the Maharal says, you know what? That if you expose your child to Torah, if you expose your child to Kedusha, if you surround your child with positive influences, you will get the schar. The schar will come. What will be the schar? The schar will come in a well-adjusted, holy child who always wants more Kedusha in life. But if you think that starts at the age of education, when they come into school, it's not true. So much of the way our children grow up is all about the influences we surround them with, even before they're even aware of what it is that's going on. If I blanket my child in an atmosphere of Kedusha, then I will get the schar. I, as the parent, will get the schar when I see ultimately, again, what they grow up in. And chas v'shalom, the opposite is true also. Children pick up on negative influences so quickly, even though parents often think that their kids don't know what's going on, like they're shielding their kids from certain things. Every parent knows it's pashut, not true. Positive parenting is all about blanketing your child in positive spiritual experiences. I go ahead and I bring my child to Hakel. What is the kid going to be doing the whole time? Right? Are we done yet? Right? Is the king still speaking? Where's the candy man? Right? So remember, we're not that little son. They're going to sit there like their mouths wide open, drinking in every single word. The kids, they're going to be running around the Beis Hamikdash. They're going to be climbing up poles. They're going to be this. They're going to be that. But all of that is okay. Why? Because what you've done is you've given them a positive spiritual experience, and you, the parent, will get the schar. He goes on. The Gemara says, Amar lahem, so we'll say, listen to how beautiful this is. This is amazing. So remember, Rabbi Yoshua just got this out of his Talmidim, of Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka and Rabbi Elazar. So he just got this out. So look what he says, we'll say, it's amazing. So he says, Margalis, Amar lahem, Margalis tova haisa biyadchem. You had this beautiful jewel, this beautiful gem in your mouth. Ubikashtem la'abda mimeni. And you were going to hold it back from me, meaning that he's saying, I had to pull teeth to get this out of you, and you were going to. Well, another very important yesod. We sit here and we learn the wee hours of the morning, and we'll say sometimes we forget. Like, this is a treasure. It's an absolute treasure. Every single word, every single line, every single daf is such a magnificent treasure. Sometimes it becomes a little bit boring or talks about things that we don't know what it's talking about. It's not associated. But again, this is it's important to remind ourselves that here you have Rabbi Yoshi. You can imagine the scene. He's sitting at his table on Sukkot and he's like smiling ear to ear because he just feels like he's won $1 million because he heard a new concept in Torah that he never heard before. That's what it means. We strike the lottery every single day when we learn Torah. He goes on. Va'od darash. Furthermore, he darshans. Es Hashem ha'emar. It seems to be that once they started quoting this, so now they say to the Rebbe everything else Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah said in the yeshiva that day. Va'od darash. Es Hashem ha'emarta. The pasuk literally means you have praised HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Or as Hashem ha'emarta hayom, you have praised God today. V'Hashem ha'emircha hayom, and God has praised you today. What does that mean? God said to the Jewish people, Atem asisuni chativa achaz ba'olam. You have made me a singular object worthy of praise, meaning you have singled me out for praise in the world. Va'ani eschem chativa achaz ba'olam, and I will single you out for special praise in this world as well. Atem asisuni chativa achaz ba'olam. You have made me. You have singled me out for praise in this world. Because what does the pasuk say? So what does Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad mean? That ultimately, again, Klal Yisrael says to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? Hero is HaKadosh Baruch Hu is one. So we accept the fact that the Ribono Shel Olam is the one and only God for us. I will make you a singular item worthy of praise in this world. This Baruch Hu says, who is like the nation of Israel, a singular nation on the face of the earth. V'afu pasach v'darash. Furthermore, he said, Divrei chachamim kidarvonos ukimisamoros netuim ba'ali asufos nosnu miroa echa. So we'll say over here, he quotes the pasuk from Koheles, which literally means the following: the words of the Chachamim are kidarvonos. Darvonos, we'll say, is a goad. So you know what a goad is? It's like an ox goad. It's a stick. It's a stick with something sharp on the end of it, that in order to prod the cattle, in order to prod the cow. So what happens? So the words of Chachamim are like goads, ukemas maros, nituim, and like nails that are planted. Ba'ale asufos nosnu meroeh echad. Those who gather in gatherings have received their teachings from the one shepherd. So what is this talking about? Why are words of Torah compared to a goad? Lomar lecha, to teach us. Madar banzeh mechavein es apor letzlameha lahotzi chaim liolam af divrei Torah mechavlin es lomdeha midarchem isla darchem. So what's the point of the goad? The point of the goad is to keep the ox on target, so that it plows and vegetation, life is able to come forth. So to Rabbi say, what's the point of Torah? Such an important yesod. What's the point of Torah? Torah, the words of the Chachamim, are literally what? They're like a goad. What's the point? To keep us on the straight and narrow, so that ultimately, again, we could also go ahead and it deters us from the darchei misa, from the ways of death, ultimately again to the ways of life. So I might have thought that just as the darvan, the goad, is movable, so too again the words of Torah are movable. Meaning I will say, to me, just like the goad changes over time, so maybe Torah changes over time. Talmud lomar mismoros. Therefore, it also calls it like a nail. Because I will say, what happens when you embed a nail in something? It remains there. But ima misamer zeh chaser v'lo yeser. Af divrei Torah chaserin v'lo yiserin. But if that's the case again, I could say just like this nail. I'll say what happens to a nail over time. So a nail over time, ultimately again, it diminishes. It becomes more deficient, but it never increases. So too perhaps Torah diminishes over time and does not increase. Tamalomar nituim. Therefore it says the words of Torah like they are planted. Ma nitiyazu para virava, just like Rabbi says, something that is planted, ultimately again it flourishes and blossoms. Af divrei Torah parin v'ravin. So too Rabbi said the words of Torah have a way of multiplying as well. That Torah is a living, breathing, organic entity that ultimately again has something to say for every single aspect of our life. It's like a living, breathing thing that is constantly blossoming. Baalei asufos, who are the men who gather in groups. Elu talmidei chachamim. This refers to Torah scholars. Sheyoshvin asufos va'oskin b'Torah. They literally sit in groups and they engage in Torah. I will say this is amazing. So what happens when a group of talmidei chacham sit and learn? Halalu mitamin v'halalu mitarin. So say what happens? So you have this group and they're discussing a particular issue, and this group says that the item is tahar. This group says that the item is tameh. Halalu osrin v'halalu matirin. Right? This group says that the item is mutter. This group says the item is aser. Halalu poslin v'halalu machshirin. Right? This one says it's posel. This one says it's kosher. So I'll say, so look what the Gemara says. Shema yomar adam heich ani lamei Torah. Right, me'ata. So the person will say, "How am I ever supposed to learn anything?" Right? Everything is always a machlokes. Right? Everything is always a dispute. So how am I ever? Right? It's true. Right? How am I ever supposed to know exactly what to do? Talmud lomar kulam nasnu miroa echad. Therefore, the pasuk tells us everything was given to us from one shepherd. Kel echad nasnan. One God gave it to us. Parnes echad amran. One shepherd, the Ribono Shel Olam, told it to us. Mipi Adar kol ha'ma'asim baruchu, and he, that shepherd, Moshe Rabbeinu, received it from the master of all creation, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. D'chsiv vayidaber Elokim es kol hadvarim ha'ela. Af, we'll listen to this. Af ata aseh aznecha ke'aparchases. Make your ear like a mill. We'll discuss what that means in just a moment. Make your ear like a mill. Ukenei lecha leiv maven, and acquire for yourself an understanding heart. Lishmoa as divrei metamin, ves divrei metarin. Listen to the words of the ones who say that the item is tamei. Listen to the words of the ones who say the item is tahar. As divrei osrin, if the ones who say that it's aser, ves divrei matirin, the ones who say that it's mutter. As divrei poslin, the ones who say that it's possible. Ves divrei machshirin. So we'll say, so what does this mean? This is really a very dramatic Gemara. So first of all, if you take a look at Rashi, Rashi says over here. Rashi says, no, he doesn't define. He defined it somewhere what that mill was. What does it mean to make yourself like a mill? I will say, what does a mill do? A mill goes ahead and you put in all the stuff and it grinds it out. What the Gemara is suggesting over here, I will say, is what do you have to do in life? In life and in Judaism, you have to ingest all of the information and then what? Grind it out and try to figure out ultimately again what it is that you should do. So I'll say it's a very important yesod that, what's interesting is that halacha empowers us to really go through the process of understanding what it is that we are doing. So the beautiful part is, yes, we have many machloksim, but at the end of the day, halacha l'maisa, it is our job to sift through all of the information, which all comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and to try to figure out ultimately again what it is that is correct. We have to make our ear, literally make your ear like kefar cheses, like the mill, make your heart understanding, process all the information, and try to arrive at the conclusion. So, both say, it's interesting that just as an aside, that we have a Mishnah in Avos that says ukenei l'charav. Ukenei l'charav. So ukenei l'charav means person should have a rebbe. So it's interesting that Rav Shmuel Uzida in the Medrash Shmuel says, what does ukenei l'charav means? Ukenei l'cha, make yourself into the Rav. What does it mean about saying? That really, it's yes, we all have to ask shilas and we all have to go ahead and have a rebbe, But part of Judaism is we are supposed to engage in the process as well. That I'm supposed to try to understand the truth. I'm supposed to engage in the research. I'm supposed to engage in the process. I'm supposed to try to understand as well. K'nei lecha, make yourself the Rav as well. I mean, I know a lot of people who do that, right? But the idea is that even if I can't be the final arbiter, and even if I'm not necessarily knowledgeable enough to make the final decision, at least at the end of the day, I have to try hard to have that discerning ear, to have that ear that's like a mill, and that discerning heart. Okay, the Gemara goes weiter. So B'lashon hazeh amar lahem, ein dar yosem shav ben Azariah sharei b'soch. So this is amazing. So now Rabbi Yoshua says to his Talmidim. Now remember, the Talmidim just said to Rabbi Yoshua all this stuff that they just heard in the Beis Medrash from Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. And after hearing this, Rabbi Yoshua says that a generation that has Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, such a generation is not an orphaned generation. Meaning he marveled at Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah's beautiful Torah. Disanya. So now the Gemara goes back to the beginning of the story. So as we saw that Rabbi Yoshua, it was like pulling teeth to try to get his Talmidim to tell him what they learned in the Beis Medrash. So why don't they just tell him? I mean, what is the big deal? When you show up, you're going to show up, you know your Rebbe's going to want to know what you learned today. Why don't you just tell him? So I'll tell you, I'm Shulamis because of an episode that occurred. What happened? The Sanya, Maaseh Rabbi Yosef ben Damascus. Supposed to listen to this. There was once an episode of Rabbi Yosef ben Damascus. Shahalach lahakbil Pnei Rabbi Elazar belud. He went to go visit his Rabbi Elazar on Sukkis in Lud. Amrlo ma chidush hay bebeis hamedrash. So he asked, Rabbi Elazar asked his Talmud, Rabbi Yossi ben Damascus, tell me what chidush did they make in the Beis Medrash? Amrle nimnu v'gamru. They decided in the Beis Medrash today, Ammon u'Moav ma'asrin ma'israni b'shvius. That in the lands of Ammon and Moav, if Jews were living in the lands of Ammon and Moav, then what? Even during a Shemitah year, they take Meiser Ani. They take the tithe for the poor. Now, what does that tell you? Essentially, that's another way of saying that the laws of Shemitah do not apply in the lands of Ammon and Moab. That the lands of Ammon and Moab do not have Eretz Yisrael's sanctity. Amar lo. So listen to this. So Rabbi Elazar gets angry. So Rabbi Elazar says, Yosi, pashut yadcha v'kabel einecha. Stretch out your hands and literally receive your eyes. And I'll say, now what does that mean? If you look at Rashi, Pashut Yadecha v'Kabel Einecha, Huksha be'inov shenasan atar la'osa dorish, v'halo miyamos anshe k'nes hagdol l'haisa takanazu. I'll say, amazing. So what Rabbi Elazar was saying was, he got angry. Why did he get angry? Because here Rabbi Yossi is giving credit to this Beis Din for enacting this takana, and already again that takana existed long ago. So literally he says, Rabbi Yossi, because of what you did, literally you're going to become blind. So Pashat Yadav V'Kibal Einav. So Rabbi Yossi ben Damascus accepted the words of his Rabbi, and he became blind. Bachar Belazar. Rabbi Elazar said this in the heat of the moment. After he realized what he said, he began to cry. Va'amar Sod Hashem liyireyav ubrisa lahodiyam. The secrets of God are ultimately known to those who fear Him. Ubriso and His covenant are those to whom make it known. We'll see what that means in just a moment. Amar lo lech emor lahem. So he says. So now Rabbi Elazar says to Rabbi Yossi ben Damascus. He says, "Go and tell back. Go back." And tell the Rabbanim in the Beis Medrash that you were just in. Don't think that you are the ones who just enacted this. This is the Masorah I have from my Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, Sheshara mirabo, who he heard it from his Rabbi, V'Rabbo mirabo, and his Rabbi from his Rabbi. That's what Hilchasa l'Moshe Misinai. There is halacha l'Moshe Misinai. Ammon u'Moav ma'asrin ma'aser ani b'shvius. That in this lands of Ammon and Moav, they take ma'aser ani in the Shemitah year, meaning that we don't observe the Shemitah rules in the lands of Ammon and Moav. Why not? Matan, Rabbi say, listen to this. Harbe krachim kavshu oli mitzrayim v'lo kavshum oli bavel. Remember again, there are two times that we, so to speak, conquered the land. The first time was under Yoshua, what we call kibush rishon, kibush ole mitzrayim. Those who came up from Egypt, we conquered the land. And then again, remember, we were exiled after the destruction of the first Beis HaMikdash, and then came back again and quote-unquote reconquered or re-sanctified the land afterwards. So what happened? The Gemara says, there are many cities that we conquered the first time when we came from Mitzrayim that we did not conquer the second time when we came back from Bavel. Mipnei shekedusha rishona kidsha l'shaita v'lo kidsha la'ased lava. Because once again, the kedusha, the first Beis Hamikdash was not the permanent kedusha. The kedusha only existed when the temple stood. When the temple did not stand, that kedusha went away. And therefore, in order to revest the areas with kedusha, they would actively have to go and remekadesh it. So here's what's interesting. What the Gemara is saying over here is the following: when we came from Mitzrayim to Eretz Yisrael the first time, we come into Eretz Yisrael. Remember, the lands of Ammon and Moab are the lands of Sichon and Og. We conquered those lands. And what happened to those lands? Once we came into Eretz Yisrael proper, those lands were vested with Eretz Yisrael Kedusha, which means that for the entire period of the first temple era, what happened? What happened? That land was vested with, that was Eretz Yisrael Kedusha. However, again, but when we came back for the second Beis Hamikdash, we did not revest those lands with Kedusha. Why not? What says very interesting, so that the poor should have a source of sustenance during the Shemitah year. Meaning that if the laws of Shemitah, if you don't revest the lands of Ammon and Moab with Kedusha, then what does that mean? They don't have Eretz Yisrael sanctity. And if they don't have Eretz Yisrael sanctity, then what? Then Lemaisa, again, you could work them on the Shemitah year. And if you could work them on the Shemitah year, then what? Then they provide a source of sustenance for the poor during the Shemitah year. So the Gemara says, Tana, so we'll say, therefore, what's happening over here is Rabbi Elazar was upset that Rabbi Yossi ben Damascus told him that the members of the Beis Medrash took credit for this takana, when in fact this takana predated them by many years. When Rabbi Elazar calmed down a little bit, so what happened? He davened that the eyesight of Yossi ben Damascus should be restored, and indeed, it was restored. All right, so we'll say Now we go back to the Gemara. Ezehu shota. What's the definition of a shota? Right? What makes a shota? Obviously, we say a deranged person. There has to be some definition for this state. What is a shota? So the Gemara answers, Hayotze yechidi balayla. Someone, for example, who goes out alone at night. Thank you. Who goes out alone at night? Because also, again, remember, that was considered to be dangerous. It's considered to be dangerous going out at night alone. So someone who clearly does not care for his personal safety. Ba'alan ve'sakvaras, someone who sleeps in the cemetery. Halan ve'sakvaras. Ba'mekares ksuso, or someone who tears his clothing for no reason. Look at Rashi just a moment. Ezu shota. Who is this shota that we said in all places is normally pater from mitzvos, mina onesh, and from responsibility, from punishment. Ve'ein kinyan lo kinyan. What he acquires is not an acquisition. Ve'ein memkar mimkar, and what he sells is not a proper transaction. So what is the definition of a shota? So the Gemara says again, someone who goes out alone at night has no regard for his personal safety. Someone who sleeps in the cemetery, which is just weird, unexplainable behavior, and someone who tears his clothing, engages in destructive acts for no real reason. So the Gemara says, Itmar Rav Huna Amar. Rav Huna says, Ad shihu kulan bebasachas. This is very interesting. Rav Huna says, you see, when we read this first thing about, what does it sound like? It sounds like if you do one from this category of behaviors, you are a shota. Rav Huna says, no, it's not just do one, but rather what? You have to go ahead and do all of them. Rabbi say, bevas achas normally means at the same time. It doesn't literally mean at the same time over here, but it means is you have to engage in all of these activities. So a definition of a shota is someone who goes out alone at night, tears his clothing for no reason, and sleeps in the cemetery. Someone who exhibits these three behaviors is a shota, but apparently if you just did one of them, you might be weird, but that doesn't make you a shota. So the Gemara says, I'm Rabbi Yochanan, no, afilu ba'achas man. Rabbi Yochanan says, not true. Even if you only did one of these actions, that is enough to categorize you as a shota. Someone says, what's the case? Hey chidami. If it's clear that the person is engaging in one of these behaviors out of shtus because he's deranged, then you're right. Afilu b'chadanami. Therefore, even one of these behaviors should be enough to categorize me as a shota. If I did these actions, but it's clear that it's not because of derech shtus, it's not because I'm deranged. Afilu kulhu nami lo. Then lemaisa again, even if I did all of them, that should not make me a shota. Meaning, I'll say if I had a reason for doing these things, then at the end of the day, again, even if I did all three, it doesn't make me a shota. To which the Gemara says, li'olam dika avelu derech shtus. In reality, the case is where I'm doing these things derech shtus, but even though I'm doing it derech shtus, interestingly enough, there is a way to explain each of these behaviors. How could I explain the behaviors? So we'll say, why would a person sleep in the cemetery? In order that a spirit of impurity envelop them. What does it mean? What does it mean? Look at Rashi. Ruach shedim shesayu lios mechashev. I want to be a sorcerer. Right, I want to be a sorcerer. The rabbinate didn't work out. Right, I want to be a sorcerer. So what happens? So how do you go ahead? How do you learn kishuf? So apparently, again, if you sleep in the cemetery, there are all types of spirits of impurity in the cemetery. So a person feels, let me sleep there. I'll be enveloped by this, and I want to be a sorcerer. So again, I will say one could say that the act of sleeping in the cemetery ultimately, again, does have a positive, constructive purpose, or vayotzi chidi balayla, or a person goes out alone at night. Amor gandrifas achte. It could be that a person is seized by gandrifos. And I will say, what is gandrifos? So again, Rashi will see actually on the next. If you look at Rashi, la'olam de ka'avalu derach shtos. At the end of that Rashi, he says gandifos. Ani shamati choli ha'ochiz mitoch da'aga. I will say gandifos could be almost anxiety. Anxiety. A person suffers from anxiety. As soon as a person suffers from anxiety, what do they need? They just need a little bit of air. They need just to get out of the house a little bit. Or it could be, Rashi says, I think it means that person gets a fever. Kadifus could be a fever. What happens when they get a fever? They need to cool down a little bit. They need the fresh air. So I might have thought that even though the act of going out at night, by definition, is an act of shtus, but a person could have a good reason for it. Or hamakareas kisuso, or a person goes ahead and tears his clothing. Amar bal machshavasu. Right? I might have thought that again, if a person tears his clothing, that what? Maybe he's just preoccupied with something else. He's just not thinking about what he's doing, and therefore he tears his clothing. But lav dafka, it's an act of shtus. However, kevan da'avdinu lekulu. But once you've done all of these things, tap of dalid, kimi shenagach shar chamar v'gamol v'na'aseh muad lakol. But I will say again, once a person goes ahead and what? Once a person does all of these things, so we'll say it's like an ox that gored an ox, a camel, and a donkey. We'll say, now what does that mean? Just very quickly, because of time. The halacha is that a shor becomes a muad, right? If a shor is a tam, let's say an ox gores another ox, so again, it's considered to be, it's not a habitual offender, and therefore it only pays a certain amount of damages. Once an ox has gored 3 times, it's already muad, it's already considered to be a habitual offender, and therefore the mice, it has to pay a heightened level of damages. We'll say, but again, in order for a shor to become a muad, it doesn't have to gore the same kind of animal 3 times. So, for example, if an ox gores the first time another ox, the second time a donkey, the third time a camel, that is still called what? That's still called a muad. So, both say, if a person, what the Gemara is suggesting over here is if a person engages in these 3 types of behaviors, he sleeps in the cemetery, he goes for a walk, he tears his clothing, even though again it's not repeating the same behavior over and over again, that is enough to what? Make him a shota. Look at the top Rashi, skip down a little bit. He says, Afkan lo ba'u shlosha dvarim li'ado b'vasachos ela kulan mishum shtus. So both say again, ultimately again, a person does not need to go ahead and do all of these things at once. Vasachos ela kulan mishum shtus. So both say what the Gemara is suggesting over here is the fundamental dispute. According to Rav Huna, in order for a person to be categorized as a shota, a person literally has to do all of these things: tear my clothing, sleep in the cemetery, and go out alone at night. According to Rabbi Yochanan, all you need to do is one of them. And the chiddush over here is that what? Even though these things could, technically speaking, be explained as being normal, rational behavior, if you see that it's operating out of the context of shtus, even just engaging in one of these behaviors is enough to classify a person as a shota. We'll continue in Meretz Hashem. We're not finished with this machlokes. This machlokes will still extend tomorrow. We'll pick up again second line of Dalet Amud Aleph tomorrow. We'll say just a reminder that tonight at 8 o'clock begins our, it's actually going to start probably a little bit more like 8:05, is the Meretz Hashem going to begin the Daf Yomi Chabura, which is an opportunity again to focus on different topics from the Daf in a more comprehensive, Eon, a more in-depth way, part of the downside of Daf Yomi, there are no downsides of Daf Yomi. The only potential, if one had a negative outlook on life and was looking for something negative to find about Daf Yomi, we go quickly and we don't have an opportunity to really delve into a lot of the fascinating topics. So this Chabura, which will Amirat Hashem occur every single week, gives us the opportunity to really delve into certain topics in a more be'ir, in a more comprehensive, thought-provoking way. So that's going to happen at Amirat Hashem Thursday nights. The first Chabura tonight is going to be given by Moshe Abramson. So again, it's going to be here in the Beis Medrash at night, and I think it's really tonight. It's going to 8 o'clock. And remember, again, there is a late Mariv, Amirat Hashem.
In terms of the Rambam, just in terms of the Ravens game versus...
Is there a Ravens game?
Yeah. Well, just divine scale.
Right, so again, remember, right, the decision you make, I don't want to put any pressure, right, but the decision you make tonight could tilt the scales. And it's not just your scales, but remember, again, it's the scales of the Medina, and ultimately, again, the scales of the world. But otherwise, don't feel pressure, right? But again, in Yahrzeit, that's that. And remember, again, there is a late Mariv in Yahrzeit Hashem at 9 o'clock. Will there be pizza? Right. You could bring pizza. Have you?